They called it paranoia. Then government files confirmed it. For 40 years, officials insisted no citizens were being used as test subjects. Then a leaked memo exposed the truth. Hundreds of black men were studied, lied to, and left untreated as their bodies failed for medical data. The Tuskegee scandal wasn't a lone atrocity. From CIA mind control experiments on unwitting civilians to military plans that nearly turned America against itself, the line between conspiracy theory and fact was erased by a government stamp. The files are open now, but what else has been left to rot in the shadows? In 1932, the U.S. Public Health Service launched a study titled Untreated Syphilis in the Negro Male in Macon County, Alabama. 400 black men, most of them poor sharecroppers, were told they would receive free medical care for bad blood. The doctors promised meals, rides, and burial insurance, but never mentioned the real purpose: to watch the disease destroy their bodies over decades, even after a cure existed. When penicillin became the standard treatment for syphilis in the late 1940s, none of these men were told. Internal memos and protocol pages, now public, spell it out in chilling terms. A 1969 progress report states, "As I see it, we have no further interest in these patients until they die." The men made regular trips to the Tuskegee Institute, submitting to blood draws, spinal taps, and exams, believing they were being helped. In reality, they were denied medicine and left to suffer strokes, heart failure, blindness, and madness, all for the sake of scientific observation. Peter Buxton, a public health service investigator, first heard rumors about the experiment in the mid-1960s. He filed complaints internally, comparing the study to Nazi war crimes. He was told to keep quiet. By 1972, Buxton had seen enough. He leaked the files to a reporter at the Associated Press. The story broke on July 25, 1972, and splashed across the front page of the New York Times the next day. The public outcry forced the Department of Health to appoint an emergency panel. The panel's report called the study ethically unjustified, and within months, the project was shut down. Congressional hearings followed, led by Senator Ted Kennedy. Survivors and families filed a class action lawsuit, winning $10 million and lifelong medical care. Not a single official faced criminal charges. The only real accountability came in the form of new laws. The National Research Act of 1974 required informed consent for human subjects, and the Belmont Report set the rules for medical ethics. In 1997, President Clinton issued a formal apology, calling the experiment clearly racist. But the scars remain. For 40 years, officials dismissed the rumors as paranoid fantasy until the government's own stamped memos proved every word. The Tuskegee study stands as evidence that official secrecy can mask crimes against the most vulnerable, and that the truth only surfaces when someone risks everything to drag it into the light. Sidney Gottlieb walked the halls of the CIA's technical services staff with a briefcase full of secrets and a mandate that went far beyond anything in the agency's public charter. Under his direction, the MK Ultra program spread its roots through more than 80 institutions, universities, hospitals, prisons, each one a front for experiments the public would never have accepted. Official ledgers, later unearthed by accident, list 149 sub-projects: chemical mind bending, hypnosis, attempts to erase memory, and the search for a drug that could turn a person's will into a blank page. LSD was the favorite tool. Doses slipped into drinks, cigarettes, or even food, with no warning and no consent. Some subjects were prisoners, others psychiatric patients. A few were ordinary citizens in the wrong place. The agency even hired a stage magician, John Mulholland, to teach agents how to spike a cocktail without being noticed. Behind the curtain, the goal was simple: find a way to break a mind and rebuild it from scratch. Frank Olson, an Army scientist, became the program's most infamous casualty. In 1953, Olson was dosed with LSD without his knowledge during a CIA retreat. 9 days later, he fell from a hotel window in New York. The agency called it suicide. Years later, Olson's family discovered declassified files suggesting a cover-up. With details so disturbing, they spent decades fighting for answers. The truth about MKUltra almost vanished forever. In 1973, as the Watergate scandal threatened to pull back the curtain on decades of covert action, CIA Director Richard Helms ordered all MKUltra records destroyed. Shredders ran day and night. But bureaucracy has blind spots. A cache of 20,000 pages, misfiled in a financial records building, survived the purge. When a Senate committee demanded answers in 1977, those forgotten files became the backbone of the public record. Proof that the rumors of mind control and secret drugging were not just pulp fiction. The surviving documents reveal not just the scale of the program, but the agency's obsession with erasing its own tracks. What did not get shredded was only saved by accident. For the families left with questions and the thousands of unwitting subjects, official answers remain buried in redacted pages and classified vaults. The files are stamped with the dates of their release, a reminder that in the world of secret programs, the difference between conspiracy theory and historical fact is often just a matter of which documents survive the fire. In March 1962, a document stamped "Top Secret" landed on the desk of Defense Secretary Robert McNamara. Its author was General Lyman Lemnitzer, chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. The title was Justification for U.S. Military Intervention in Cuba. The contents read like the script of a paranoid thriller, except every line carried the signature of America's highest-ranking generals. The memo laid out a menu of staged attacks to be blamed on Fidel Castro's government. The proposals were not vague. One section reads, "We could develop a communist Cuban terror campaign in the Miami area, in other Florida cities, and even in Washington." The list continued. Hijackings of civilian airliners, sinking a U.S. Navy ship, orchestrating funerals for fake victims, and planting evidence to ensure the blame would fall squarely on Cuba. The language is clinical, almost bored in its cruelty. Another page states, "We could blow up a U.S. ship in Guantanamo Bay and blame Cuba." Casualty lists in U.S. newspapers would cause a helpful wave of national indignation. The Joint Chiefs signed off on every detail. Lemnitzer's signature stands at the bottom, a silent endorsement of mass deception. The plan called for the deaths of Americans, real or staged, to manufacture consent for war. No rogue agents, no deniable assets. This was the brass in uniform pitching false flag terrorism as official policy. The Northwoods memo sat in government vaults for decades, locked away with the rest of the Kennedy assassination files. It was not until 1997, when the Assassination Records Review Board ordered the release of long-sealed documents, that the proposal surfaced in public. The original pages, stamped with government declassification dates, left no room for doubt. The United States military had plotted to attack its own citizens to justify an invasion of Cuba. President Kennedy's response was as blunt as the proposal itself. He rejected the plan outright, and soon after moved to replace Lemnitzer as chairman of the Joint Chiefs. The Northwoods file was buried, never executed, but never disowned by those who signed it. For years, whispers about inside jobs and staged provocations were dismissed as fever dreams. The Northwoods memo, now public record, stands as proof that the unimaginable was not only imagined, but typed up, approved, and nearly set in motion by the most trusted hands in American defense. August 1964. United States destroyers, Maddox and Turner Joy, cut through the black waters of the Gulf of Tonkin. Official reports claim North Vietnamese torpedo boats attacked twice in 3 days. The first clash, on August 2nd, was real, a brief skirmish with bullets exchanged and no American deaths. The second, on August 4th, was the one that mattered. That night, radar screens lit up with ghostly blips. Sonar operators called out torpedoes in the water. Officers radioed back to Washington. Another attack was underway. Within hours, President Johnson addressed the nation. Congress rushed through the Gulf of Tonkin resolution, handing the White House a blank check for war. The American public heard only certainty, enemy aggression, and righteous response. But inside the National Security Agency, doubts were already surfacing. Signal intelligence did not add up. Reports from the Maddox crew contradicted the official story. No one saw enemy boats. No one found torpedo wakes. The so-called attack became a phantom, conjured by confusion, bad weather, and the pressure to confirm what higher-ups wanted to hear. Robert Hanyok, a National Security Agency historian, would later piece together the paper trail. In his internal review, declassified in 2005, Hanyok found that key intercepts were cherry-picked or withheld. One paragraph stands out. It said that the overwhelming body of reports, if used, would have told the story that no attack had happened. The memo never left the vaults until decades later, long after 58,000 Americans and millions of Vietnamese were dead. No one in Congress saw the real signals intelligence before the bombs started falling. The Gulf of Tonkin incident was more than a mistake. It was a faked casus belli, built on doctored data and passed off as gospel truth. The classified documents, stamped and released 40 years too late, show exactly how easy it is to turn a manufactured incident into a war. The cost was measured not just in dollars or credibility, but in bodies. The war that followed would become the bloodiest American conflict since Korea, and it all began with a signal that never was. In February 2026, a single page from the final Department of Justice tranche landed like a grenade in the world of American justice. The page, stamped with the date and the words, "Prosecutorial discretion, sensitive ongoing concerns," laid out in dry legal jargon what survivors and reporters had suspected for decades. The rules are different for the powerful. The file detailed a decision not to pursue charges against a named billionaire, citing potential diplomatic fallout and extraordinary resource implications. Names were redacted, but the context was unmistakable. The memo referenced communications between senior Department of Justice officials and private attorneys for 2 foreign royals, conversations that never appeared in any court docket and never triggered a single subpoena. Julie K. Brown, the Miami Herald reporter, who first cracked the Epstein case wide open in 2018, spent weeks combing through the newly unsealed tranche. She found patterns that went far beyond one man or one case. In her own words, these files show a system where the wealthy and connected could count on silence, slow walking, or outright non-enforcement. Not because of evidence, but because of who they were. The documents outlined how internal Department of Justice emails flagged reputational risk and potential impact on allied intelligence relationships as reasons to avoid further inquiry. One note, initialed by a senior prosecutor, simply read, "The cost-benefit calculus is unfavorable." The 2026 release did not settle every rumor. The so-called blackmail tapes remain the stuff of speculation, their existence neither confirmed nor denied by the files. The tranches did confirm a parallel legal process, one that shielded certain names from the consequences faced by everyone else. The files included a timeline showing years of warnings from field agents ignored or redirected, and a list of sealed settlements that ran to dozens of pages. The language was clinical, but the meaning was clear. There was a class of people for whom justice was always negotiable. Brown's reporting, backed by the tranche's own words, left little room for comforting illusions. The old excuse that no one is above the law collapsed under the weight of official stamps and prosecutorial notes. The story was no longer about one predator, but about the machinery that protected him and others like him. The conspiracy, as it turned out, was not a secret cabal in the shadows, but a bureaucracy with a rubber stamp and a Rolodex of untouchable names. Secrets don't just leak on their own. They're pried loose, clawed out by people who know how the system works, or how to break it. The machinery behind every declassification is a maze of legal deadlines, bureaucratic stalling, and loopholes big enough to drive a truck through. The Freedom of Information Act, passed in 1966, was supposed to be a crowbar for the public. In practice, it's a waiting game. Agencies drag their feet, citing national security, privacy, or the catch-all phrase, ongoing investigation. The average wait for a Freedom of Information Act request to yield real answers is 20 years. That's if the documents weren't destroyed, lost, or shuffled into the wrong file cabinet by accident. Some files only see daylight because someone sues. Freedom of information. Act litigation turns stonewalling into a legal risk, forcing agencies to cough up records they would rather keep buried. Even then, pages arrive blacked out, names missing, whole paragraphs vanished under thick bands of ink. Statutory exemptions, classified information, law enforcement secrets, and personal privacy become shields to keep the most damaging details hidden. The result is often a stack of pages stamped released, but stripped of meaning. Other times, the courts step in. Judges can order entire vaults unsealed, especially when public interest outweighs official excuses. Congressional subpoenas have pulled files from locked safes, dragging agency heads into televised hearings. But these levers only work when someone with power decides to use them. Most secrets die of old age, not exposure. Whistleblowers are the wild card. When insiders refuse to play along, the whole process can be bypassed in a single leak. Files that would have stayed buried for decades hit the front page overnight. But whistleblowers pay the price. Careers ended, reputations shredded, sometimes worse. Every so often, a legislative review board or a special commission is formed to sweep out the cobwebs. The Church Committee, the Assassination Records Review Board, ad hoc panels after a scandal. These bodies can force mass releases, but only after the damage is done. The pattern is always the same: years of denials, Then a sudden flood of stamped pages, each one a confession that the truth was never about trust, just timing. The machinery of disclosure grinds forward, but only when someone jams a wrench in the gears. Today, the term conspiracy theory often serves as a firewall against uncomfortable truths. Each declassified file is a reminder that official denials can outlast entire generations. As new scandals surface and old secrets unravel, skepticism is no longer cynicism, it's self-preservation. The next unthinkable story may already be written, just waiting for its declassification stamp. What will we dismiss today that shapes tomorrow? Share your take below.